Hey friends, thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to share with you a recipe that's inspired by one of my favorite cookbooks, the Joy of Cooking cookbook. And the recipe is for their biscotti. I've been making this for a few years and I really enjoyed it. The first dry ingredient we need is 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And then after that, we need 1 1/4 cup of sugar. And then we need our next dry ingredients. That's half a teaspoon of salt and 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Next, we need our wet ingredients. That's a 1/4 cup of oil, 3 large eggs, a teaspoon of almond extract, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And the oil that I used was peanut oil this time, although in the past I've used vegetable oil and different varieties of neutral oils. So you take all the wet ingredients and you beat them together until they're all incorporated. After that's all mixed together, you're going to add in your 1 1/4 cups of sugar, your half teaspoon of salt, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and then you're going to mix all of those together. And after that's incorporated, I'm going to get that last little bit back in there. You are going to keep mixing it until it's all incorporated together, and then you're going to be adding in the flour. Now, this dough can be a pretty dry dough. It's not wet. It's something that you're going to knead, and even when you're kneading it, it's going to feel a little bit drier than you expect. So just get ready to do some folding and kneading together. I'm going to change my mixing tool because that's not working. I remember when I first started baking and cooking, whenever I would have like the wrong utensil, I would just keep using it because I hated the idea of making new dishes. But I've just learned that, do myself a favor, just get the new utensil. You'll make it easier. So you can see here that I'm starting to mix it together, really trying to scrape the bottom because that's where the moisture is. I'm trying to get just the dry pockets kind of mixed together. Once this is kind of like a shaggy dough, it's going to get dumped onto a space where I can knead it together. So I have those silicone baking sheets. I found that that's also a really good place to knead dough when I need to. It keeps the counter cleaner, just makes cleanup a lot easier. I'm a big fan of when I'm trying to cook to just make things as simple as possible. Because if I make it difficult, then I'm just going to be less likely to do it. This version of the recipe differs from the original version in just a few small ways. One of the ways is the original version calls for orange zest and lemon zest. I don't have oranges or lemons around, and I don't want to go to the grocery store just to get those ingredients. I've made them with and without those ingredients, and I think they're delicious even without them. If you happen to have oranges or lemons around, I would suggest zesting them in. It's nice. But if you don't have it, don't let that stop you from trying to make the recipe. One of the other things that I changed in this recipe was the original called for 2 large eggs and 2 large egg whites. So instead of having 2 egg yolks lying around and I don't know what to do with them, I just put 3 whole eggs in, and I think that it works great. Now, this is a plain type of biscotti, but biscotti is it is actually the most plain biscotti. But biscotti is delicious with things baked into it, like dried fruit or nuts and things like that. It's also really nice when it's decorated, typically with chocolate. That's what I've seen it decorated with. And it just makes it look even fancier, which is a nice addition if you're giving it as a gift. My favorite types of additions to put in here would be dried cherries. It works really well with the almond extract. You could do candied orange, and especially if you dipped it in chocolate. Chocolate and orange is a really nice flavor combination. I have another favorite book, not just the Joy of Cooking cookbook, but it's called The Flavor Bible. And in this book, you can put in virtually any ingredient. And the person who compiled the book, they asked many different professional chefs what pairs well with whatever ingredient that was given. So For biscotti, it works really nicely. Like when you look at things that go well with chocolate, almonds go well with chocolate. So you could do chopped almonds, or there's already the almond extract in there. I'm a really big fan of almond extract. I think I love anything with almond extract in it. But also with chocolate, almonds go very nicely, cashews go very nicely. It says here, I'm looking at the book right now, apricots. I've never tried that, but that sounds delicious. Um, and so candied orange or candied ginger would be really nice, baked into the biscotti and then dipped in chocolate. Some of the other suggestions that they have could be espresso would be nice. I've never tried that, but I think I should try that. I've been working in my mind just about some other types of biscotti that I can make this year. I'd like to maybe make like 5 or 6 different types and give those combinations, a few of each together in a gift. And I usually make this recipe probably just once or twice a year. It's one of those things I think I like a little bit too much, so I don't have it around the house all that often. So you can see here that I poured out the mixture and I'm shaping it into a log shape that's probably like 12 inches, a foot long. And I'm using this silicone baking sheet because the original recipe does call for using saran wrap, but whenever I can, I try to use reusable things. So I opted to use the silicone baking sheet, and I think it works really well. And just using that scraper to help get it onto the baking sheet where I will be baking it. I've had these for a few years, and I think they work really well. I just use them for baking mostly. I don't use it for roasting anything high heat. Um, I do use it for like freezing things because you can peel them off the silicone base really easily too. I remember years ago when silicone baking stuff first came out, I tried making muffins in like a silicone baking tray, and I was disappointed with the texture. Like I feel like it did something strange to the texture. I don't find that with these baking sheets. I don't know if it's just luck because I haven't baked certain things that maybe would be affected, but I have not found any sort of a bad effect. So I really suggest them, and I find them really versatile. It's nice. So shaping this dough, I divide into 2 groups. So you're gonna do 2 equal um, logs, and you are gonna bake them next to each other, using that dough scraper just to help sometimes gather the dry crumbly bits or move the dough from one place to another place. Even though it's pretty dry, it is also kind of sticky. It's a funny combination. And so these are going to be baked in an oven that is 375 degrees. And after that, you're going to have to cool them to then get them ready for slicing. So we're moving the second log on there, and you can see it kind of got misshapen and misformed, but that's okay because it's a pretty forgiving dough. You can reshape it many, many times. So just kind of get it back all together. That's the only thing, is just want it to not be breaking apart. And I put that seam side down because I figured it would look a little bit better when it was baking. And now we've formed it into the shape, and it's going to go into the 375-degree oven for 25 minutes. And you want to give a little bit of space between the logs because they do puff up and puff out. So if they're too close together, they're just going to get baked together. So give them a little bit of space, make your life a little easier. So now they're going to come back out of the oven and they're going to go onto a cooling rack. So they can be a little bit delicate when they're just coming out of the oven. So I'm just going to move them over here and let them dry until they're mostly cool. They don't have to be completely cool. But if you want to slice them thin, then you're going to want them even cooler. I usually slice these about a ½ inch, and that seems to work for me. If I try to make it too thin, I find they just crumble more. So I don't do that. So here I am slicing them with a serrated knife. That way it just cuts a little bit more easily. Ooh, that one's a chef's treat right there. I don't know if you know about chef's treats, but if there's a little extra bit left over, you get to have it because you're the chef. So now both of the logs are um, cut up, and they are going to get their first extra baking. So what that means is all of those slices are laid out flat on the baking sheet, and they're going to go back into the oven for at the same temperature, 375 degrees, for about 10 minutes. You'll see they start to like darken just ever so slightly. And then you're going to have to do that same step. You're going to flip them over and do that again for about 5 to 10 minutes. One more time. So last year when I made these, I made them for some neighbors, a few coworkers, people that I knew, like the mailman, stuff like that. I felt like it was a nice treat. It was those that were dipped in chocolate, but not too over the top, where if somebody didn't get you something, they wouldn't feel bad. It's just like a nice little treat that you can share with somebody. Now, these ones over here have not been double baked. My husband doesn't really like them double baked. He finds that they're a little bit too hard, and so I always save him some that were just once baked. But I don't mind when things are dry. Like I'm a pretzel fan, so I think that dry, crumbly things, I think they're very tasty, so I like them. Now they're getting flipped over. You could see that they changed a little bit in color. They got a little bit darker. And after they're all flipped over, they're going to go back in for the 5 minutes. And then after that, they'll be taken out to cool. So if you wanted to make these more special for gift giving, you could definitely, like I said before, just add some extra things into the biscotti before you bake them. Like you can mix in the dried fruits or the nuts. You can dip them in chocolate, and then also when the chocolate is still wet, you can dip them in crushed nuts or different things like that. So it just makes it look more fancy, and more fun. So here they are. After the second bake, they're going to uh, get put back on the cooling rack and let them dry. Since these are a really dry type of a treat, they store really well for a long time. So just let them cool fully, and they'll be able to be stored for um, a few weeks. Another reason that I like to make these is that they ship really well too. So Christmas is coming up here, and I live in the Hudson Valley in New York State in the United States. And so Christmas time is during our colder time of the year. So you can ship something that has like chocolate that's like dipped in chocolate and it won't melt or just get funny in the shipment. So I like to send these to people who might live far away, even like, out of state, because it ships really nicely too. So my favorite way to have them is with coffee, a little bit of milk. I don't put anything sweet in the milk because the cookies have their own light sweetness. They're not too sweet, which is nice. And I dunk it in to soften it up a little bit, wipe on the sides so it doesn't drip all over. Still dripped. And enjoy it. I hope you get a chance to enjoy it too. And thanks for sharing your time with me.